Yo, what up, 910? Welcome to the 910 podcast, week 2 of Church 21, week 23, I believe, of our podcast, which is kind of bananas to think about that. That's a lot of podcast episodes. But we got Charlene Golnick, the one and only, and look, we're matching.
Hey. Yeah.
Planned it. Just kidding. Didn't plan it.
A good boss and employee moment.
It's good. It's
employee
good.
sounds like such a weird word.
Okay, last week we brought up the movie Shark Tale right at the beginning, and I need to know what your favorite animated film is.
Animated? Oh, gosh. The only thing I can think of is The Little Mermaid.
Of course.
Because I always just go back to that. But you know what? I liked that movie where they're all like feelings in the head. What is that one?
Inside Out.
Inside Out. Yep.
Yeah, that movie's
one's
amazing.
Good. Cars. Yeah, you can't just...
What's your least favorite Cars?
Well, you guys were talking about, I don't think I've seen Cars 2. And y'all said that was like not your favorite.
Yeah, Cars 1's
maybe
incredible. It's the OG. Cars 3, I just recently watched for the first time with Piper. It's so good.
Okay, I think I know.
Cars 2 is like, it's all right. It's fine. But when you said Little Mermaid, I was thinking about recently I spent 2 days in Mexican jail. Shout out to the country of Mexico.
Publicizing that.
Yeah, it was interesting. But we sang for about an hour and a half in jail. It was like with these 4 cells in like a concrete room. Like somebody would start a song and then everybody else would like join in. It was like me and four of my buddies, but Jake Lambrisi may or may not have been in there with me, and he has the voice of an angel. Shout out Nodes.
Yeah.
Also has Nodes. Hey.
Speaking of sermon. No, I'm not a man.
But I think somebody started singing. They were like, "Look at this stuff, isn't it neat?"
On the concrete floors with.
He like jumps in and sang the whole song. It's one of those moments where you don't know how many lyrics you know to some of these Disney songs until somebody starts singing it, and you're like, wow, I know that entire song. Right.
Ironically, as we talk about
worship through music,
like
perfect.
How many worship songs do we have memorized versus Disney songs?
Oof,
that's just
convicting
Disney's
right
taking
there.
Over.
Yeah. But worship is, music's powerful, right? It's like the ability even in a setting like that to lift our spirits and laugh till we cried and to remember lyrics. Like we literally sang for an hour and a half, like random songs. We started with Christmas carols and then moved into Disney and then went into like Queen and who knows what. But music is it's wild. It blows my mind that you can hear a song that you haven't heard in 5 ever and then know every word. And there's such a beauty in that. I think God designed us that way to give us this gift of music that when we sing, we can remember who he is, and in light of who he is, who we are. I think there's such a power in that. I'm curious for you, I know exactly when the turning point happened for me, but like for you growing up, was worship something that you always like fell into naturally? Or was there ever like a moment where you were like, I like really don't like this, or I'm really uncomfortable, or like, talk to me about the journey there.
So I think I took like a what biblical character are you test, and it came out that I was like David, which they're great. I mean, he's a man after God's own heart, but there are many things I don't want to be like David. But I do feel that like the energy of like
also,
sometimes...
was this like a Facebook quiz?
Yeah,
or
back in the day.
LOL.
Or like AOL, who knows. But it was one of those, like, I do feel like I resonate a little bit with that. If I'm not careful, I can want to feel closer to God. And so a little bit of that, like, energy. Like, I really think if people are jumping and dancing in a room, like, I will follow. But, I mean, little shameless plug here, but Jana Elira, I don't know if any of our North Coast born or just Christian, like, born in the church kids know, but she is my, like, not biological.
Jump into the light, light, run away from what's not right.
My childhood was, like, doing VBS.
Piper loves that song.
Yeah. So I would like learn all the hand motions and in some of her little background movies. So I like knew
Baby Char.
Yeah, Baby Char and like Little Kid Char.
Redhead Char.
Yeah.
Char identifies as a redhead.
We need to define that. Today, not so much, but 9-10, fear not. I was born a natural ginger. All of that said, I grew up like around worship, but I don't know if I like ever fully connected it, but I loved the energy and it was great. But I do remember the first time that it like clicked to me of like the purpose or like why worship matters. And it was not working at Hume Lake, but when I went as a camper to Hume Lake Christian camps, we both worked there. For the first time, I was going into my sophomore year, and this is more so like when it became real in the sense I remember was the first time I raised my hands. I'm actually pretty sure Love Light, Andrew Pulfer's
shout out to Love Light. Wow.
Was there. Yeah, I didn't know Andrew Pulfer was Love Light until like 3 months into being at North Coast. And I was like, oh my gosh, I raised my hands. But I remember like singing a song and being like, okay, here I go. I'm going to do it. Like, I'm going to put my hands out. And I'm trying to remember the song. It was like, I will climb this mountain with my hands wide open. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And then it like keeps repeating itself. And for whatever reason, like my hands couldn't stop. Like they had to go out every time I heard that song. So that to me was more of the first time I think I felt free to worship. And
it's so funny. It's like we think that everybody's eyes in the room are going to be on us.
Totally.
We're like,
because all my friends were there. Had a crush there. Like I was like, everyone is staring at me right now.
If I put my hands up in the air,
I'm not that big of a deal.
Like,
right.
Everybody's gonna
like
look. But it's just so silly.
I actually don't matter.
It's so silly. We are so. Everybody's way too consumed with themselves to be looking anywhere else, right?
Totally.
Like, if everybody in the room is thinking about like, oh my gosh, are they looking at me? Then like nobody's looking at you.
Right.
It's like we talked about this in our sermon, but the irony of like being at SoFi or whatever, like you're at a football game, someone scores a touchdown, and you're like, yeah, like Justin Herbert, and then you're like, oh no, are people looking at me?
Right.
With my hands up in the air.
And no one's like, bro, put your hands down.
Exactly.
Maybe the Raiders fan is.
Exactly. We're such like our bodies follow our expressions in almost every other aspect of life, right? Yeah. And yet there's something funny about worship that I think we get caught up in, that self-awareness and just going like, is this weird? Is this uncomfortable? But I think there's so much power in that because I remember that wrestle too of being like, well, I don't want to like fake it. I don't want to like, I don't feel like worshiping, and so I'm not going to put my hands up. And I think it's the opposite. I think we need to express ourselves physically, like to put our hands up in a moment of like, okay, God, I surrender, or in a moment of like, we talked about this a little bit at the end of the sermon of like that Piper uppy, like I want to go up. Like what a beautiful picture of God the Father. And for those of us that have awesome father figures, like you and I are like so abundantly blessed to have dads that we can look up to. And for those of you with awesome dads, like you get that. But for like so many of our listeners that don't have awesome dads, like this is such an awesome moment between you and God the Father, where you get to have that dad figure that you might not have had for most of your life. And what an amazing thing that God invites us into that, to go like, I'm me and you, I need up right now. I need to be cared for. I need to be seen. And I think so many times when I express myself, I have nodes, sorry. When I express myself physically, when my body moves, my heart does follow, right? It's like your running analogy in our sermon. We do like an all staff chapel here, and there's so many times in the middle of a day, they start worshiping, and I'm like, like, I don't want to worship right now. Like this is not what I feel like doing. And yet 10 times out of 10, if I just start, to your point, and even if it's just like a posture of obedience, going like, all right, Lord, like I really don't want to do this right now. Like I don't feel like doing this. I think I watch my heart follow of, I need to be reminded of who God is, because I'm grumpy, right? Like my feelings are like, I don't want to do this.
Like, I don't think anyone has regretted worshiping.
No.
Like, I don't know a single story where someone's like, man, I really shouldn't have worshiped in that moment. You're always like, not because it like made you feel better or anything, but it's like, what's wrong with leaning into truth?
Yeah.
Like you have absolutely nothing to lose.
Yeah. Talk to me about that a little bit. I think this is a popular mentality in the church, and probably in 910 specifically, of like, well, I go to church because I want to feel better. Right. What would you say to the person who's like, oh, I'm going to church, or I'm going to worship because I want to feel better?
Well, first, I think I just want to even apologize if that's ever the thing that is communicated. And I think that that's easy, especially I remember looking up to adults and thinking like, wow, they must have their life all together because they seem happy, they seem joyful. But the truth is they're just trying to be strong leaders and give us the best that they have. But the best leaders were the ones that were like honest and real of like, life is really hard. And they invited us in to be like, here's the reality. Like, I'm going through this. Like, maybe my parents are getting this divorce or yada, yada, yada. Like, my kids are dealing with this. Cancer stricken my family. Like, but I know God is still good. And so I think just being able to fix our minds on what is true, regardless of how we're feeling, is just something I have to go back to time and time again, which is hard because I do think I can be a feeler. And I think that's regardless of a gender thing. Like, I know people say that, like, for girls a lot too, like that we're more emotionally driven, which there is some truth in that. But we all want to feel closer to God.
Yeah.
But yeah, when it's like our soul thing, Brayden, get out of here.
Hi, Brayden.
It's hard. Hi. Like, I was talking with Hunter about this. Like, I think of a mom, God willing, I hope someday I get to have my own kids and raise them. And I picture the morning at like 3 a.m. where my baby boy, because I really want boys, but I'll be fine if I have girls.
Yeah, me
like,
too.
Is crying.
Me too.
Yeah. They're crying at 3 a.m. and I just go, you know what? I don't feel like getting up right now.
Yikes.
Their whole life is dependent on me nurturing them. And if we didn't have someone, like, I don't think any of us would be here today if someone in our life didn't say, you know what, I'm gonna choose to go beyond what I'm feeling right now and make like the move towards what I know I need to do.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I'm sure being a parent is very humbling in that because there are many times that you don't feel like wiping Piper's butt.
Oh no, I love that. It's my favorite thing in the world. The poop smell just wafting up. It's amazing.
But it's just, you have to put that aside.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, there's so many moments where it's like all I want to do is what I want to do in this moment, and it's not an option. Right. You don't get to choose that anymore. Right. But I was thinking, I just Googled the lyrics to Highlands because this was
that one's good. Golly,
when you were talking about if we as a church communicate like we have it all together, or like Paige and I have, speaking of having kids, like we've wrestled a lot with that of we've had many miscarriages, like lost babies. And I remember after one particular miscarriage, I don't know if this song had just come out, but North Coast had started singing it. Yeah. And North Coast is like they're like tip of the spear with this stuff, right, which I didn't know until I came here and started working here. Like a lot of the songs we're singing here are like, oh yeah, this came out yesterday. Yeah. And it's like, golly. Like
we're showing our friends, hey, have you heard of this song?
I know,
like, no
right?
And you're like, yeah.
Or like I'll go to a camp and they'll be like, there's a new song. I'm like, and we sang that like a year and a half ago. Okay. But this song Highlands came out, and I remember like being in the middle of one of the darkest moments of my life personally. Like I just was pissed at God, just going like, what the frick? Like my siblings have a lot of kids. Like I know all my friends have kids. Like why is this a struggle for us? Like we want to bring children into this world. And I remember singing this song, or we were, somebody came on stage and sang this song, and this song just became like a mantra for me in this season. And the lyrics are like, it was like, I will praise you on the mountain. I will praise you when the mountain's in the way. You're the summit where my feet are. I will praise you in the valleys all the same. No less God within the shadows. No less faithful when the night leads me astray. You're the heaven where my heart is, and the highlands and the heartache all the same. Like no less God within the shadows. I will praise you in the valleys all the same. I'll praise you on the mountain or when the mountain's in the way. I literally remember singing this song, and still to this day I get like pretty choked up if this song comes on, and I'm like,
it's connected to a season.
Oh my gosh, like crazy. Just hands up, just tears flowing down my face, going like, God, I will praise you in the mountain, and I will praise you in the mountains in the way. Because to your point in the sermon, like our feelings they're really good gauges. I needed to be aware of what I was feeling. Yeah. Like the call is not real. The call is not to just like shut off your feelings, right? You can't pick and choose which feelings you turn off. If you turn off your feelings, it's like a breaker. They're all going off. Your bad feelings and your good feelings. That's why people numb.
Yeah. So you miss out on like the richness of being able to.
You cannot experience joy and happiness and love if you have shut off sadness and hardship and the brokenness. It's one big gauge. And in that season, I had to just, my feelings were an incredible gauge of where I was at. It's like a dashboard on a car, right? It's like the gas light comes on or the check engine light comes on. It's like, you need to change your oil. Here's the things. I'm giving you an awareness of what needs to happen in your life, but you don't stare at your dashboard when you're driving, right? You need a GPS. You need to know where you're going. They're a terrible guide, but they're good gauges. You need to know that. But for me in that moment, like, my body needed to be involved. I needed to just go, God, like, I surrender to you in this moment. And then I needed to be reminded with lyrics, right? Yeah. God, you are good. I don't feel like you're good. I'm not experiencing that goodness right now, but my feelings are, you said this in the sermon, it was a beautiful thing of like, they're inconsistent. It's like this roller coaster of emotions. And I remember, I think in high school and even like early college days, like so much of my experience of God was a roller coaster. It was this like, these camp highs, go on a retreat. I'm like, everything is awesome. Everything is cool when you're loving the Lord, right? Just going. Yeah. And then I'd have these moments of like, God, where are you? Right. I'm either like a lot of sin is present in my life, or I just don't feel like I'm going into worship. I'm doing all the right things, but I don't feel God. And it's like this roller coaster. And I think for me over the years, like, I think what spiritual maturity has brought on, and by no means have I arrived, but I think further in my journey, there's a little bit, there's still like the ebbs and flows, but I think it's much less peaks. It's a little bit more of that consistency as I look in the rearview mirror and go, God, this is who you are. This is who you've been in my life. For me, it's really hard to know where God is working right now. But if I look back, crystal clear, like I can see God's hand moving. And so in a season like that of brokenness for me, like, God, you are good. I can sing myself into believing this, of going, I will praise you on the mountain. I will praise you when the mountain's in the way. So Hunter, if you ever want to make me cry.
And it's cool. Like, God isn't asking us to be obedient in worship or like disregard those feelings in anything that he like hasn't experienced himself. Like in Hebrews, it talks about how Jesus is a great high priest who is not unable to empathize with our weakness. Like he understands the things that we're going through. And in that moment, like we get to use our feeling of weakness or fear or, just whatever yuck we're dealing with to be like, I get to actually be closer to Jesus right now because he understands this emotion of how I'm doing and how I'm feeling low, and use that as a way of like drawing closer to God instead of feeling like I have to distance myself because I don't have myself together, so I can't approach God right now.
So good. Okay, we have like 2 or 3 minutes left, and it wouldn't be a 910 podcast in this series if we didn't give our listeners some dating advice. Don't. Talk to me about like this. I'm going to tie this in actually.
Okay, let's hear it.
What would it look like in a relationship to be driven by feelings?
Oof. Just bad. What does it look like? I think
like we both have experience in this. We've both been driven by our feelings in relationship.
And I think, again, feelings are a good gauge. Like if you don't feel great about someone, maybe that's a good gauge of something. But if we're driven just strictly by our feelings, I think we're gonna miss out on like the areas that we need some clarity or like wisdom. I think wisdom and feelings, like it's really hard to be wise when you're being driven by your feelings because you're not going based off of what you know to be true. You can be like, he's a cute boy or she's a cute girl, and like I feel butterflies when I'm around them. Again, we have all experienced this. But if it's only based off of that, like now after being married, because Chase and I have it all together after a year and a half, like I don't wake up and always feel in love with Chase, but yet my love for him has grown more because of what I know to be true about who he is, and I've seen his character over time. And so in a dating context, I would say date from a distance, but not like that you're actually dating. Like remove the opportunity for your feelings to get in the way, because you can observe someone from far away and be like, oh, I like that about their character, or that's cool how they handled that, but you don't like mess with the trickiness that is
I think way too many people take a deep dive way too quickly, right? You're like all in, and that happens like when we get physically involved, right? Our bodies are designed that our emotions follow our body, right? We've talked about that. And so when we get physically involved with somebody else, like the sex is supposed to be this ultimate expression of two becoming one. And when we start taking steps towards sex, whether it's like making out or, even like the cuddling or, whatever it is, it's like, how far is too far is the wrong question. And so when we start taking those steps, like our emotions follow what our bodies are doing. That's why like when we always talk to people about dating, it's always like hold off the physical as long as possible.
But then also to the emotional side is sometimes if we get so caught up in our feelings, then we're like, well, now I feel really close to them. And so I'm going to just like let go of that like boundary that we had so we can cross that line physically because we feel so in love and because we feel more connected. So we're going to be guided by our feelings to then convince ourselves that what we're doing with them physically is okay.
Physical and emotional chastity.
So
two
connected.
Things that are so important that we don't have time to define, but we'll finish on this.
We'll talk about it.
Love is a choice, not a feeling.
Yes.
That's why you can wake up not feeling in love, but choose love. It's why marriages where they meet their spouse on the day of the wedding, right? What is that called?
Married at first sight?
No, it's a arranged marriage. That's what I was going for. That's why they can work. It can work. Arranged marriage can freaking work, right? I'm kind of low key a believer in arranged marriage, that you can meet your spouse on the day of the wedding and make it work. Why? Because love is a choice, not a feeling. God chose to love us. He didn't feel like it's not for God so loved. For God so felt like loving the world that He gave His one and only Son. No, it's for God so loved. It was a choice.
We give Him no reason to feel like loving us.
It's not a feeling.
Run. If a boy says I have strong feelings for you, ask him, what does that mean? Run,
ladies, run. Okay, it's like that TikTok video.
Run. Umbrellas.
Yeah, so many umbrellas. But all right, 910.
Love you guys.
That was 910 podcast. Let's worship together this weekend. Next Wednesday, we love you, Shar. Fantastic Shar bars as always.
Thanks, love you guys.
Peace out, Cub Scouts.